What made Roman emperors never worry about the future? You've been living wrong if you haven't learned this from Epictetus. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why Marcus Aurelius chose silence over arguing, and why he credited his mental strength to a once enslaved teacher who never raised his voice. You imagine the stone streets of ancient Rome at dusk. The scent of baked bread still hangs in the warm air, but the shops are closing shutters drawn. Behind a small courtyard in a lesser district, a man with a limp sits cross-legged beside a single flame his students gathered around. This is not a senator, not a general, not a man of wealth or pedigree, and yet you listen. Epictetus, born a slave, owned by a brutal master who one day twisted his leg until it snapped. Epictetus didn't cry out. He simply said, "If you continue, you'll break it." Then crack. There, I told you. That's how the story goes. And whether every word of it is true or not, the lesson is. You begin to grasp it. Freedom does not come from power, from gold, from birthright. It comes from how you respond. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. To understand this better, let's go back to that dark courtyard again. The flame flickers. You hear him speak calmly. "You may fetter my leg, but my will not even Zeus can conquer." The words don't feel like defiance. They feel like quiet certainty. In a world where people shout to be heard, Epictetus whispers and still changes minds. You realize that the first step to mental freedom is the recognition that no one owns your will but you. And still he was a slave. You reflect on this. How could a man in chains think of himself as free? Most modern people with two-car garages and smartphones feel trapped by debt, by jobs, by endless comparison. But Epictetus, with nothing, walked through suffering with the calm of someone who had trained for it. You lie back and think, how do you train the mind to stay free when the body is not? The story starts with loss, yes, but it leads somewhere. It's not about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about deciding how much power it gets. As he would later say, it's not things that upset us, but our judgment about them. And judgment, unlike the leg that was broken, can be trained, can be disciplined, can become stronger than your circumstances. The chains clink as the young Epictetus returns to his cell. But you now understand, though, his ankles are bruised. His thoughts walk unburdened. The next morning, you walk the same path he once did. Cobbled roads glinting with dew, the distant rumble of carts, a breeze whispering over tiled roofs. You're not a slave. But like him, you carry invisible burdens, expectations, regrets, anxiety about things that may never happen. Epictetus would tell you, start here. Start with what is truly yours. Your body, no. That can be taken wounded or weakened. Your possessions easily lost. Reputation at the mercy of others. But your judgment, your ability to choose how to respond, that belongs to you entirely. You sit with this. Some things are up to us, and some are not. These are the first words of the Enchiridion Epictetus's Handbook for Life. Not a complicated philosophy, but not an easy one either. Just a razor-sharp line that splits reality into two domains. On one side, thoughts, choices, desires. On the other, everything else. And here's the truth. That stings a little. Most of your energy is wasted trying to control the wrong side. You try to manage how others see you. You panic over whether plans will unfold just right. You wrestle with the past like it might apologize. But Epictetus smiles gently and reminds you freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. He didn't mean freedom from work or from responsibility. He meant freedom within those things by choosing to focus only on what you can truly command, your inner response. And you begin to see how radical this is. It means you can be insulted and remain undisturbed. You can lose a job and not lose yourself. You can be in pain and still retain dignity. Scholars still debate whether this kind of mental sovereignty is realistic. Can someone truly become indifferent to fortune? Or is this just cold detachment in disguise? But Epictetus wasn't cold. He was warm, alive, deeply human. What he trained himself to do was to see life like a stage play. You don't get to write the script, but you can choose how well you play your role. You look out over the rooftops now, and suddenly the noise of life feels quieter. The barking dogs, the sharp voices, the chaos, they're still there. But they aren't yours. Your power begins where their power ends. That thought comforts you. You remember a story a man once asked Epictetus how he could be so calm while sick. He replied, "I do not suffer illness. My body does." And then he turned the question around. Why should I grieve over something that isn't me? It's unsettling at first. You want to say, but the body is me. And yet how often has your mind wanted peace while your body refused to cooperate? Or your emotions betrayed your logic? The Stoics invite you to return to your core, your ruling faculty. The one thing no one can take. The only thing that is always, always yours. So as you walk forward, you let go of one small worry. Just one. It drifts away like steam from a cup. And in that release, you feel something unexpected relief. You hear it before you see it. Wood-cracking breath caught in the throat, a quiet gasp swallowed too late. The young slave lies on the ground, his leg bent at a strange angle. His master stands above him unconcerned. You watch horrified, but Epictetus is calm. He speaks without bitterness. I warned you it would break. That's the story passed down through centuries. Whether it happened just like that, no one can be certain. But the lesson has never cracked. You realize now this moment is not about endurance, it's about training. Pain comes for everyone, sharp, dull, sudden, or slow. Epictetus didn't deny pain. He denied its command over him. That distinction, subtle as a blade's edge, changes everything. Here's what most people do when suffering arrives. They resist it, question it, curse it. But Epictetus, he observes it, measures it, accepts it, like an athlete accepts sore muscles after a long day's trial. You think back to times you've been in pain, emotional or physical. You clench against it, wishing it away. But what if pain isn't the problem? What if your opinion about pain is the true source of your suffering? As Epictetus later told his students, it is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them. This is why the broken leg didn't break him. His body was injured, yes, but his judgment remained whole. It's like a fortress inside him that even cruelty couldn't breach. There's power in that image, a broken man unshaken. Scholars sometimes question whether this Stoic stance borders on denial. Isn't it dangerous to numb yourself to pain? But the Stoic answer is clearer than most think. You don't numb yourself. You name the pain, but you refuse to obey it. You don't become a machine. You become a master. In modern terms, it's like choosing to sit calmly while your phone lights up with alerts you don't need to check. The alerts are real, but they don't control you unless you let them. Epictetus trained himself to see emotions and pain the same way. Notifications, not orders. You remember reading about another moment when a friend asked Epictetus why he limped so gracefully. He simply said, "Because I do not pity myself." That answer echoes now. So simple, so clear. You walk beside him again in your mind. He limps, yes, but his steps are steady. His eyes are calm. He's not angry at the master, not bitter at the gods. not waiting for apology. He accepts that pain is part of the script, but he rewrites the response. And you begin to ask yourself, can I train like that? What if next time discomfort arises, an insult, a rejection, a pulled muscle, a betrayal, you pause, breathe, refuse to label it unbearable? What if you say instead, this is part of the training? You lie back in the quiet now. Maybe your body aches. Maybe your heart still nurses old wounds. But your mind is freer than it was before. Because you've seen how a man can be broken and still win. The candle flickers low beside you, casting long shadows across the room. You sit quietly, watching them stretch and sway, like thoughts, like worries. But you're learning now. Learning what Epictetus mastered, how to tell which shadows matter and which you can simply let pass. Each day he returned to one simple distinction, what you control and what you don't. It sounds too obvious at first, like something you've heard in a dozen self-help books. But Epictetus didn't just say this, he lived it, tested it, sharpened it, until it became the core of his freedom. You imagine him again, standing in the open courtyard, teaching students of every background. One is the son of a Roman noble, another a soldier on leave, and one a quiet boy whose father was executed for treason. All of them come here because they've realized something: the world cannot be controlled. But the self can be. Seek not for events to happen as you wish. Epictetus tells them, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly. You pause at that. Wish for events to happen as they do. Isn't that giving up? Isn't that surrender? But no. This is not the surrender of a victim. It's the calm mastery of someone who understands that most of life is a storm and you don't control the wind. You control the sail. This is where Epictetus draws his boundary day after day. He cannot choose what illness strikes, what ruler demands exile, what words others speak. But he can choose how he receives them. And so can you. You think about today how much energy you spent trying to make things go your way. You pressed, you planned, you hoped. And when things veered, frustration followed. But now you consider, what if your goal wasn't to bend the world to your will, but to bend your will around what is not in weakness, in power? You remember how Epictetus taught his students through metaphor. When a sailor goes to sea, he'd say he doesn't control the wind or waves, but he does control the rudder. That's enough. And then, almost smiling, unless he wishes to drown, of course. Scholars still ask, how far can this really go? Can someone truly remain undisturbed by tragedy, betrayal, or loss? Isn't that inhuman? But Stoicism never asks you to feel nothing. It asks you to feel wisely. You can grieve but not collapse. You can care but not cling. You can dream but not demand. The power lies in choosing your inner posture no matter the outer conditions. As the night deepens, you try this posture on. You recall one thing today that upset you. A comment, a delay, a sharp tone. You replay it not to judge it, but to reframe it. To ask, was this in my control? And when the answer is no, you let it go. Not with resentment, with grace. That's the practice. It's quiet now. The shadows are softer, and you feel it somewhere deep in the center of your chest. Not victory over the world, but a quiet victory over yourself. The first thing you want in life is usually pleasure. The last thing you need is addiction to it. That's the lesson Epictetus faced every morning as he rose from a straw mat in a cold room, no pillows, no comforts, no wine waiting for him. And still he smiled. You reflect on this, how many of your desires are things you've never questioned: a better car, a smoother day, recognition, ease. But Epictetus trained himself to want only what he could control. He taught that misfortune often comes not from lack, but from longing for what isn't yours. Freedom, he said, is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it. That's not a call for misery. It's a call for clarity. He walked the streets of Nicopolis not as a man deprived, but as one who had freed himself from the tyranny of craving. A soft bed nice but not necessary. A good meal pleasant but not owed. Praise welcome but not required. And that's the secret few people learn. The fewer things you need, the fewer things can enslave you. Desire, he warned, is like a dog pulling you toward every smell. You run after it, breathless, never satisfied. But you can train it. You can hold the leash. You consider your own life, how often your peace depends on things going right. You want others to treat you kindly. You want traffic to move faster. You want comfort on demand. But all those things are external. You don't command them. And because you desire them, you suffer when they don't arrive. So Epictetus taught the discipline of desire. Not to destroy joy, but to anchor it in what's reliable, your virtue, your choices, your values. Don't seek to have events happen as you want them, he said, but want them to happen as they do. That's the echo from earlier, but here it takes root in your appetite. You begin to train what you want to align your cravings with reality, not fantasy. This is hard. Even now, you feel resistance. Shouldn't I want success? Shouldn't I want happiness? But Stoicism doesn't forbid these. It forbids dependence on them. You can love what's good without demanding it. You can prefer fortune without clinging to it. There's a story about Epictetus watching one of his students grieve over a lost inheritance. The man sobbed, furious at fate. Epictetus didn't scold him. He simply asked, "What did you think that riches were yours by right? That the world owed you permanence?" The man paused. In that pause, he saw the truth. His suffering wasn't from the loss, it was from the expectation. Scholars often wonder, did the Stoics want too little from life? But that question misses the point. It's not about wanting less, it's about wanting rightly. Wanting in ways that make you stronger, not weaker. Freer, not more entangled. So tonight, you review one thing you chased today. Was it yours to command, or was it a shadow on the wall? If it wasn't yours, release it. If it was, act on it with purpose. That's the training. That's the path to a quieter, firmer kind of joy. You step into the ancient palestra, the training grounds, where young Roman men wrestled to build strength. Sand clings to bare feet. The air smells of sweat and olive oil. But tonight, there's no fight in the ring. There's a quiet voice in the corner reminding you the world is your opponent now. And every insult, every misfortune, every inconvenience is just part of your training. That's how Epictetus saw it. Life is a gymnasium for the soul. You don't avoid hardship, you use it. You don't curse your challenges, you welcome them like a seasoned fighter welcomes a stronger sparring partner. It's how you grow. Difficulties show a person's character, Epictetus taught. So when trouble comes, think of it as a weight for you to lift. You begin to reframe everything. That delay in traffic, mental conditioning. That harsh word from a friend, resistance training for the ego. That long line at the market, a test of your patience, reps for your will. But this isn't romanticizing struggle. This is reclaiming it. When Epictetus was exiled from Rome, many pitied him. But he didn't sulk. He simply said, "Very well, now I train somewhere new." He took his philosophy with him because it lived in his choices, not his surroundings. And this is a turning point in your thinking. Suffering doesn't stop the Stoic path, it is the path. You start to feel it now. That small, subtle shift. You no longer see discomfort as something to flee from. You lean into it, examine it, treat it like a teacher rather than an enemy. and suddenly you recall a modern echo of this mindset. Athletes ice their bodies after brutal games. Soldiers drill under harsh sun to prepare for battle. Meditation practitioners sit still through aching joints. Why not? Because they enjoy pain, but because discipline expands through trial. Scholars sometimes challenge Stoicism for its toughness. Doesn't this glorify suffering? But that's a misreading. The Stoic doesn't chase pain, they just refuse to waste it. And you remember a story? One of Epictetus's students asked how to stop resenting unfair treatment. Epictetus looked at him and said, "Would you rather be beaten by a stick or trained by it?" That image lingers. The insult that stings you now, it's a stick. The failure that makes you doubt yourself, another stick. But they aren't weapons. They're tools if you choose to see them that way. And you can feel the lesson entering your bones. Life isn't trying to break you. It's trying to build you if you're willing to cooperate. So tonight you ask yourself, what weight did you lift today? What struggle did you turn into strength? Even if you stumbled, even if you fell, it was still practice. Still forward motion, still worthy. Tomorrow there will be more provocations, more noise, more unpredictability. But now you know these aren't setbacks. They're your gym. The curtain rises, but you don't choose the scene. You don't write the script. You don't even know how long the play will last. But Epictetus says, play your role well. You walk now through the colonnades of an open-air theater, marble seats empty beneath the stars. He liked this metaphor life as a stage, you as an actor. Not the director, not the critic, just the performer delivering your lines with dignity no matter how tragic or joyful the part. This is how he made peace with injustice, with pain, with loss. Remember, he said, you are an actor in a play the playwright chooses. If it is short, it is short. If long, it is long. If you are to act a beggar, do it well. If a cripple, do it well. If a ruler or a common man, that too. Your job is to act the part given to you. You pause there. It challenges something deep in you, the modern hunger to shape everything, to rewrite the script, to reject any scene that doesn't please. But what if control isn't freedom? What if acceptance is, there's power in choosing to perform your part well, even if it's not the role you hoped for? That's what Epictetus trained his mind to do, to say yes to fate not in weakness, but in profound strength. Scholars debate whether this is fatalism. Is it passive resignation? Epictetus would say no. It's about consent not to injustice itself, but to the reality that certain things lie beyond your reach. You can fight reality and suffer, or you can work within it and remain free. That's what he chose even after exile. Even after slavery, he accepted his role with grace, and he played it better than most emperors. You imagine a young Roman soldier coming to him once furious at his poor pay and low rank. Epictetus listened, then asked, "Do you think the general owes you the role of a commander, or that the gods owe you comfort?" The soldier stayed quiet. Epictetus said softly, "Then what is left but to be the best soldier you can?" You look at your own life. You may not love your circumstances. Maybe you carry wounds or grief or the weight of responsibilities you didn't ask for. But the question remains, will you play your part well? The Stoic answer is not to passively endure, but to actively participate with character. You don't fake cheerfulness. You bring nobility to hardship. You walk into scenes you'd never choose, and you elevate them by how you show up. And that's a skill, a practice. Each day you're cast in roles: parent, sibling, worker, friend. Some days you're the hero, other days the servant, but all of it, Epictetus would say, is your arena. And tonight you sit with that. You take stock of the role you played today. Not whether it was fair or glorious, but whether you played it well, whether you were steady, whether you were kind. Because in the end, no one remembers what part you played, only how you played it. The wind whistles through the alley as you step out under a pale sky. There's no warmth in your coat, no food in your pack, and nowhere soft to sleep. But you're not afraid, not tonight. You chose this. So did Epictetus. He wasn't rich, never wanted to be. But he still practiced losing everything before life could take it from him. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. He rehearsed poverty the way a soldier rehearses drills so that if it ever arrived, it wouldn't catch him untrained. You lie back and imagine the cold stone beneath your back, a thin cloak wrapped tight, your stomach hollow. It's uncomfortable, but not unbearable. And more than that, it's clarifying. Set before your mind, Epictetus advised the things which seem dreadful that you may understand they are nothing to be feared. He taught students to skip meals, sleep on the floor, wear simple clothes. Why not to prove toughness, but to learn a secret most people never discover you need far less than you think. And once you know that you're untouchable. Today, most people chase abundance, comfort, status. But comfort can become a prison. The moment you need a hot shower to feel peace or applause to feel worth or wealth to feel secure, you are no longer free. So Epictetus stripped it back, not just in theory, but in practice. He asked his students, what if you lost everything, could you still live well? And more importantly, could you still live nobly? You recall a Roman story. A nobleman once came to Epictetus complaining that he feared exile. Exile, Epictetus smiled. Wherever you go, there you are. And where you are, so is your power of judgment. That's the lesson. You can rehearse loss not to become morbid, but to become unafraid. Scholars call this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, a practice the Stoics cherished. Picture what could go wrong, not to worry more, but to fear less. To say, even if that happens, I will still be me. Tonight, you try this yourself. You close your eyes and picture your world stripped bare. No job, no home, no praise, no plans. You're left with breath, bones, and will. And what rises from that image is not despair, but a strange peace. Because you see now, if you can survive in your imagination, without these things, you can survive their absence in life. And if you can still live with virtue, then you've lost nothing essential. This is how Epictetus trained, in the cold, in hunger, in silence. He didn't fear discomfort. He invited it into the room, sat with it, and asked, "What are you here to teach me?" And discomfort taught him, "You are already enough." So tonight you lie a little flatter. Let go of one comfort. Sleep on one less pillow. Turn down one small indulgence, not to punish yourself, but to remember the less you need, the more you are free. The forum is loud again. Merchants shouting, philosophers, debating, soldiers clanking past in bronze. You're caught in the noise, in the push and pull of pride and opinion. Someone brushes past and mutters an insult under their breath. You freeze. But then in your mind, you hear his voice. Would you rather win the argument or win your peace? Epictetus chose silence. He knew that most arguments don't seek truth, they seek dominance. And when you engage in every provocation, you surrender your composure to the crowd. So he taught himself and his students to answer not every insult, not every challenge, not even every question. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is say nothing at all. You become invincible, he said, when you care not to win. You let that sink in. Epictetus had many opportunities to strike back with words. As a freedman, people looked down on him. As a philosopher, they challenged him. But he was more interested in living wisdom than defending it. He didn't need to prove he was free, he simply was. There's a story one day a young student complained to him about being mocked in public. Epictetus listened and asked gently, "Were you harmed or just offended?" The student paused. "Just offended." Epictetus smiled. "Then let the other man own the insult. Why carry what isn't yours? It sounds easy, but it's not. You know the feeling when someone questions your choices, interrupts your calm, attacks your pride. Your body heats up. Your mind sharpens. You want to reply. You want to win. But you're learning now that the cost of victory is often your serenity. Scholars discuss this Stoic restraint. Is it strength or suppression? Epictetus made the distinction clear. Suppression is hiding rage under a smile. Strength is having no rage at all, and strength takes training. You reflect on a modern example. Imagine a firefighter walking into a burning house. He doesn't scream, he doesn't argue, he acts, calm, steady, effective. That's the ideal Stoic, not passive, but composed, focused, unshaken. So when Epictetus taught about insults, criticism, even betrayal, he didn't mean to avoid all confrontation. He meant choose your battles with wisdom, not ego. Because most of what people throw at you isn't about you at all. It's about them, their fears, their frustrations, their need to control. You don't have to accept their delivery. You can return it to sender quietly, peacefully, without bitterness. Tonight, you replay one moment from today when you got pulled into a verbal tug of war. Maybe it was online, maybe in your thoughts. Ask yourself, was it worth my peace? And if it wasn't, imagine handling it again with stillness, with silence, with a gentle smile. That's your training. To hold your tongue not because you're afraid to speak, but because you've mastered when it truly matters. And when you choose silence not out of fear, but out of strength, you'll hear something underneath the noise. Your own still mind. You step into a shaded courtyard, stone columns cool against the morning air. Students gather again, scrolls in hand voices hushed. Epictetus walks in, not with fanfare, but with quiet presence. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't boast. He sits and waits. And then says something simple that silences the room. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's the lesson today. You think about how often people speak of values online in meetings at dinner tables. Words about integrity, kindness, discipline. But how many live them? Epictetus believed the loudest teaching is the life you live when no one is watching. So he focused not on performance, but practice. He lived in a modest home, taught from memory, wore humble clothes. When a student asked him what it means to be a Stoic, he didn't launch into theory. He simply asked, how do you behave when someone offends you? When fortune abandons you, when food is scarce, or when you're alone? That is your answer. He showed them what virtue looked like, not in lecture halls, but in daily life. You reflect now if someone observed your routine, your reactions, your habits, your posture, what philosophy would they see? That's the measure. Scholars often admire how Epictetus refused to turn his teachings into just intellectual games. He wasn't interested in philosophical debates that led nowhere. He once said, "Don't make your studies a decoration. Let them be medicine." That means don't read wisdom just to sound wise. Use it to heal something. This is where real Stoic training happens, not in the head, but in action. In whether you return the shopping cart, in whether you speak gently when tired, in whether you act with fairness even when no one's applauding. There's a story about Epictetus giving away his last piece of bread to a beggar. No words, no lesson, just a quiet offering. The students saw it, and they understood. Because true philosophy doesn't preach. It radiates. Tonight you turn inward, not to examine what you believe, but what you do. When you were ignored, today did you seek attention or remain centered? When you were frustrated, did you lash out or breathe through it? When the chance came to show kindness, did you take it or postpone it? These answers are more important than any theory. You realize something now. Epictetus didn't try to convert people. He simply lived in a way that made others wonder what gave him such peace. That's influence. That's teaching. That's what it means to carry wisdom not in your mouth, but in your bones. So tomorrow, speak less. Watch more. Let your presence do the teaching. You don't need to declare you're on the Stoic path. Just walk it with grace. The day fades, and silence begins to fill the space where noise once lived. The market's quiet. The fires soften. You return to your small room, no distractions now, just you and your thoughts. And this, Epictetus would say, is the moment that matters most. The moment of reflection. Each night he urged his students to ask themselves 3 questions. What did I do well? What did I do poorly? What could I do differently tomorrow? It wasn't self-judgment, it was self-governance. You sit with this now. Not to ruminate, not to punish, but to learn. Practice yourself, Epictetus said, for heaven's sake, in little things, and thence proceed to greater. That's the spirit of nightly review. You don't wait for a crisis to begin examining yourself. You build the habit in small, quiet ways until it becomes who you are. He likely learned this from observing Roman soldiers, men who sharpened swords every evening, whether or not a battle was coming. Why? Because you don't prepare in the fight. You prepare before it. So too with character. You remember a story. A student once asked Epictetus why he didn't spend more time writing new teachings. Epictetus smiled. Why write what you have not yet practiced? And that again was his challenge. Don't collect wisdom like trophies. Live it. The daily review became his sharpening stone. Scholars have since noted how this practice aligns with what we now call metacognition, the ability to observe our own thinking. But Epictetus didn't need modern science to see its value. He knew that unchecked thoughts become habits, and unexamined habits shape destiny. So every night he returned to himself, not harshly, but honestly. And you can too. You think back through your day now. Where did you keep your temper? Where did you lose it? When did you act with principle? When did you act with impulse? You don't need to write it all down, though you can. What matters is the attention. Attention creates awareness. Awareness builds discipline. Discipline gives you freedom. That's the cycle Epictetus lived by. And here's the insight that many miss: the daily review is not about perfection. It's about progress. One small improvement, one deeper breath, one better choice. That's enough. That's the training. You lie still now, more grounded than when the day began. You've turned your gaze inward, not to dwell, but to grow. And tomorrow, when the noise rises again, you'll enter it not as a passive participant, but as someone who remembers. Remembers the stillness, the clarity, the self-honesty that sharpened you while the world slept. Because the Stoic doesn't just live during the day. He practices when no one is watching. Morning returns. The city stirs. Voices echo in the streets below, and the day's performance begins again. But you, before stepping out, pull back for one final check. Not of your clothes or your schedule, but of something far more vital: your opinion. Epictetus taught that the most dangerous thing you carry into the world each day is not your weaknesses, it's your unexamined opinions. Someone looks at you the wrong way. Someone forgets to thank you. A plan changes. You feel arise frustration, anger, doubt. But why? Because as Epictetus would say, you've assigned a meaning to those events, not the world. You. It is not things themselves that disturb people, he said, but their judgments about those things. You hold that thought gently now, like a small stone in the hand. A judgment can be smoothed over time if you're willing to examine it. There's a story about a Roman senator who once lost favor with the emperor and was publicly humiliated. Friends rushed to console him, assuming he was devastated. But the man simply shrugged and said, "If I did not believe this was misfortune, would you call it so? That's Stoicism in action. To free yourself from the tyranny of public opinion and even your own assumptions." Epictetus trained himself this way. When people praised him, he felt no pride. When they mocked him, he felt no shame. He saw praise and blame as just wind passing through, not irrelevant but unworthy of governing his soul. You think of your own life. How much of your energy is spent reacting to interpretations rather than facts? You hear, "They didn't reply," and interpret it as rejection. You hear, "This didn't work out," and interpret it as failure. But what if none of those judgments are true? What if they're just noise? Scholars still wrestle with this Stoic posture. Is it emotionally detached? Is it cold? But that's not what Epictetus modeled. He wasn't unfeeling, he was unshaken. There's a difference. He felt everything, but he filtered everything through wisdom. And the primary filter, is this judgment helping me or harming me? That's your new question now. When an emotion rises, ask, what opinion is behind this? If you can find the root, they should treat me better. This shouldn't happen to me, I deserve more. You can begin to prune it, not by force, by understanding. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to people. It means you stop letting their moods, approval, or ignorance dictate your own. You stop outsourcing your peace to strangers. Tonight, as you wind down again, you scan your mind like a traveler emptying their pack. What did you pick up today that wasn't truly yours? A worry, an insult, a label? Set it down. Release it. You don't need it for the journey ahead. You own your opinion. And if you own that, you can own your calm even in chaos. The fire burns low, casting long shadows on the stone floor. You sit across from a friend, no need for words. Just presence. Just warmth. In this quiet, you remember something else Epictetus taught, that true freedom does not mean isolation. It means right relationship with others, with the world, and with yourself. Friendship in Stoicism isn't sentimental. It's sacred, and it's earned. Epictetus believed that you are never truly free if your peace depends on another person's mood, approval, or behavior. But neither do you become a hermit. You walk a middle path, one of fraternity without dependence. To love, he said, is to wish another well without tying your happiness to them. You think back to your own relationships. When have you felt most hurt, most shaken? Often it's when someone withdrew affection or acted unfairly. You took it personally. You felt owed. But Epictetus reminds you the moment you expect someone else to complete you, you give away your inner sovereignty. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care wisely. There's a story from Epictetus's school. A student had fallen deeply in love and asked how to stop his mind from spinning in obsession. Epictetus didn't laugh. He nodded slowly and said, "Then love this person in a way that honors your reason, not your desperation." The lesson here is sharp. Real love is not clinging. Real friendship is not control. Real fraternity is walking beside someone, not dragging or being dragged. You reflect on your closest bonds. Do they lift you without owning you? Do you offer your presence without needing repayment? Scholars often debate how the Stoics approached love and family. Some read their writings and sense detachment. But others see a profound maturity, one that seeks connection rooted in character, not in comfort. And that's what Epictetus modeled. He lived simply, but he welcomed visitors, taught tirelessly, and nurtured loyal friendships. When one of his former students came back years later to thank him, Epictetus didn't boast. He said only, "You owe yourself the gratitude. I merely held the mirror." That's what a true Stoic friend does, reflects your best self back to you without manipulation or ego. You consider your own place in the lives of others. Are you a calming presence, a mirror, a refuge from noise, or a source of noise yourself? This evening, think of one relationship that matters to you. Ask, what would it look like to show up with care but not attachment, with loyalty but not fear? That's the practice. To love freely is the highest form of strength, and to walk with others without being owned by them is a quiet form of greatness. You are not alone on this path, but you walk it with integrity, not dependency. And in that balance, you find your freedom. You hear the news you've been cast out, sent away. Your time here is over. No chance to plead, no opportunity to explain. The world you knew is gone. For most, this would be the end of peace, but not for Epictetus. When he was exiled from Rome by Emperor Domitian, banished along with other philosophers considered dangerous, he didn't despair. He packed what little he owned, turned his face to the wind, and said only this, "Very well, we practice elsewhere." And so he went to Nicopolis, a remote town on the western edge of Greece. There he opened a new school, trained a new generation, and lived out his days with the same serenity he carried in Rome. This was the final test of his freedom. Exile is more than relocation. It's identity loss, social death, a stripping of everything external. But Epictetus had trained for this. Poverty didn't shake him. Pain didn't stop him. And now being cast out didn't unseat his soul. He would say, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." And that's what he embraced. The humility of starting again. The dignity of standing tall without a title, a home, or approval. You pause and imagine being exiled from your own comforts, your community, your reputation, the places where your name means something. Could you still be you? That's what the Stoic trains for. This is not just history, it's preparation, because life will exile you in different forms. A breakup, a layoff, a diagnosis, a betrayal. And when it comes, the question is not why me, but how will I meet this moment? Scholars still wrestle with Epictetus's calm. Was it real? Was it performance? But those who studied under him said the same thing: he was never bitter, never shaken, never hateful. He welcomed what came, adjusted his posture, and continued his work. He didn't need Rome to be whole. He didn't need applause to teach. He didn't need stability to remain still inside. There's a modern echo here. Think of the people who rebuild after loss, not just physically, but emotionally. The single mother who finds strength after abandonment. The refugee who starts again in a new land. The artist who continues their craft after rejection. These are Stoics in spirit. These are the quiet warriors. Tonight you reflect on what exile might look like in your life. Where have you been cast out or feared being cast out? What did you believe was essential that now feels distant, and can you say, like Epictetus, "Very well, we practice elsewhere"? Because if peace depends on place, it is fragile. But if it lives within you, it follows you wherever you go. Even into exile, you return once more to that dim, quiet room. No marble statues, no golden laurels, just a modest chair, a reed mat, and a man who owned nothing but lacked nothing. This was how Epictetus chose to live out his final years. By now he had taught emperors, soldiers, merchants, and slaves. His fame had spread far beyond Nicopolis, yet he refused to accumulate wealth or honors. He had a lamp, a few scrolls, and a small home. But he had something greater: contentment. He no longer needed to prove anything. He didn't chase ease or applause. He woke each day with discipline, taught with love, and rested with peace. His work was complete not because he'd reached perfection, but because he had let go of the need for more. This is what it means to be truly free. To be invincible, he once said, is not to be undefeatable in battle, but to be undisturbed by anything that is not your own. You walk with that now. Modern life doesn't ask you to give up everything, but it does ask you to examine what you cling to. What do you fear losing? What do you believe you need in order to be enough? Epictetus invites you to release that grasp, gently, not forcefully. To see that your happiness does not depend on opinions, riches, comforts, or luck. It depends only on your choice, your willing participation in each moment as it comes. There's a quiet strength in that kind of surrender. Scholars still reflect on how Epictetus passed. We don't have exact records, but we know he lived long into old age. We know he kept teaching until his final days. And we know he died with the same calm he lived with. No palaces, no legacy carved in stone, just the ripple of a mind that trained itself to need so little and therefore could not be conquered. You reflect on one last story. A young man asked him, "What if I lose everything I have?" Epictetus replied, "Then you will be left with everything that matters." You lie still absorbing this. You've walked now through poverty, pain, insult, silence, exile, and self-inquiry. And at the end of it all, what remains? You. Your choices, your reason, your virtue, your peace. That's what Epictetus trained. That's what cannot be taken. So now the room is quiet. The day is done. You've traveled far, not across land, but through the depths of the mind. You've seen a man born in chains rise into a wisdom that not even emperors could buy. And you've followed that path step by step through the trials he turned into teachings. Breathe now, slowly, gently. Let the lessons settle like dust on stone. You don't need to hold them tightly, just let them rest in you. What made Epictetus free was not his circumstance, but his stance. His refusal to be shaken by anything outside himself, and his gentle insistence that you can do the same. Not by force, not by denial, but by returning again and again to what is truly yours, your thoughts, your values, your ability to choose how you meet the world no matter what it brings. Tomorrow may test you, it may challenge your peace, but now you know where to return. To a still mind, a calm breath, a firm center. And from that place, you'll respond, not react. You'll reflect, not retreat. You'll act not out of fear, but from purpose. That is Stoic freedom. That is Epictetus's gift to you. Now close your eyes if you haven't already. Let go. You've trained today, and tomorrow you begin again.